Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Just wanted to touch base today and go over some different ideas about routine planning and scheduling. So behavioral activation would be the appropriate name for this from a counseling perspective, but you can call it routine or structure or just figuring out what kind of schedule works the best for you. And there's just so many different reasons that this is important for our mental health. So this year more than ever, I think with all the new demands getting placed on us, whether it's working from home or just a completely different type of structure than we're used to, I believe that having more of a solid routine day to day for the things that we do enjoy doing to take care of ourselves, to just take that extra time to make sure that we're following some kind of structure is really important. A lot of what I've been hearing from clients is that when COVID started, their routine and their schedule and their structures changed very drastically, and it left a lot of people kind of reeling and unsure of how to manage that. So it's a really easy time for a lot of people to fall into different types of compensatory behaviors. So whether that was feeling like you were just spending hours sitting around binge watching shows, or not able to stick to healthy habits and finding a really hard time replicating those habits at home, like not being able to go to the gym and struggling to replicate that at home. Just so many different things are coming up this year for people. And in general, this time of year with daylight savings time and the time change, a lot of people do struggle when it gets dark out earlier in the day, how to handle that and how to structure their day when they get home from work or school. So I wanted to go over a couple different tools that we talk about here at the practice that I use with my clients, and hopefully some of that can be helpful to everyone as we're trying to get more in touch with our routine and what works best for us. So a lot of traditional cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on really strict routine and structure. So this idea of really having to stick to a timeline and have activities planned out, and that can be very helpful for sure. But what I try to work around is coming up with a flexible routine for improving mental health and really using our intuition and living in sync with the seasons as far as how this can help us even more so with the changes that come about just day to day, week to week, month to month, and throughout the year. And that's something that I think is lacking in a lot of the Western medical model, is this idea of living with the seasons and honoring that part of ourselves. But it's something that, holistically speaking, is very important. So behavioral activation, coming up with routines and schedules, it's super important, because when you're feeling depressed or you're feeling anxious or you're struggling with trauma, it's very easy to fall into this pattern of inaction, avoidance, not having structure, and it's going to lead to the symptoms worsening and feeling stuck. Now this goes both ways. So if my symptoms of depression are worsening and I'm feeling hopeless, I'm not going to be active. I'm going to avoid other people. I'm not going to be social. I might stay in bed all day. I might be off my eating routine. I might not be exercising. It gets very easy to fall into that trap. Now it goes both ways as well, because if I am off my normal schedule, even if it didn't start with depression, if I just come off of a normal routine and I'm very used to having structure, and all of a sudden that's been changed completely for me, and now I'm kind of reeling, I'm not sure what to do with my time, that can lead to symptoms of depression or anxiety as well. So this really goes both ways. So on the graphic here, it's going to show that arrow going both directions. Whereas if we can really implement positive behaviors and have routine consistency, it's going to improve our mood, our energy, our motivation, and vice versa. If I can start to elevate my mood and become a more positive mindset, it's going to help me stay more on track with my goals and with having those behaviors where I want them to be. So scheduling positive activities is also going to leave less room for our negative habits or behaviors. It's going to help our overall mood to increase, it's going to boost productivity, and it's going to just help with our overall functioning. So we need to also have the conversation though about allowing for flexibility. So there are some people who really benefit from a rigid schedule. you'll see a lot of times in inpatient psychiatric care or partial hospital day treatment or IOP programs that there is a very rigid schedule. You're going to see every single hour planned out from what time you wake up, what time to have breakfast, the whole way through the day. Self-care activities are scheduled in. It's very regimented, which is super, super helpful for someone who is just coming out of a really bad depressive episode or just had a traumatic event and is trying to reacclimate and really get back into some sense of normalcy. However, for a lot of people, this level of structure is not realistic. Maybe they're working around other people in their household, maybe as being a parent where you can't necessarily focus on your own schedule being as rigid, you're relying on having to take care of your children. There's a lot of reasons that we might need a little more flexibility in this schedule. The other piece of that is someone who's struggling with depression or anxiety or even attention deficit disorder. If you give them a very structured schedule or routine and they're not able to meet those expectations, it can lead to very black and white thinking. So depression can lead to black and white thinking, OCD can lead to black and white thinking, anxiety, all of these things. So if I'm dealing with this type of a cognitive distortion where everything needs to be perfect, or I think that if I miss one thing on my schedule, then the rest of the day is kind of out the window, then a really rigid schedule is not going to help me. It actually might make me feel worse. If I feel like I'm really struggling to keep up with the demands of that schedule, and then every day I feel like I'm failing at it, that might not be a good time to have a really rigid schedule. So this is where the flexibility comes in. So this lack of variety in a routine and this all or nothing mentality really is tough to maintain. And so this is where we really try to direct people to use the sense of their intuition or what feels good for them, and following these cues, these internal cues, to help them figure out where and when they're going to implement these routines consistently. So one of the ideas that I love using is just having multiple options for your routine, and this opens up possibilities. So an example that I'll give is alternating schedules. So if you know that during your week you have certain days that are super busy and you're not going to have a lot of time or energy to do a lot of things, and then other days that you have a little more free time, you might want to make alternating schedules. Like, this is going to be for my active days and this is going to be for my relaxing days. So an example I'm giving here would be on an active day. You might wake up a little bit earlier and have breakfast, and then you might have a little time in that morning or a little more energy that day to fit in an exercise routine. Maybe on that day, this is an example of a student, they might have classes until 1 o'clock, and then they know they're going to have lunch at a set time because they have to get to work for a set time. So we're working their schedule around their existing demands. But then after work and after dinner, we're setting time in there for socialization. So calling a friend, and then spending time journaling or meditating, quiet activities after, and then bedtime at a decent hour. So this is also helping with concrete waking and sleeping schedules and making sure that we're eating at normal times. We're trying to include all of that into these schedules. So on a flip side of that, we have a relaxing day where it's a little more laid back. That person might be sleeping in a little more. After they wake up, they might be spending time doing quiet, reflective activities, and then going outside, enjoying time in nature, doing creative hobbies, artistic expressions, different activities that they enjoy, making time for movement, but it doesn't have to be specifically active. It doesn't have to be a workout per se. Still making time for meals on this example of a schedule, making time to socialize. Then as we see at about 3 o'clock, we put in here scheduled screen time. So a huge part of scheduling for a lot of people is trying to avoid getting engaged in like negative looping behaviors, such as scrolling on Facebook for 3 hours and not realizing how much time has passed, or getting caught up in a television series or Netflix and not realizing that they've spent hours and hours. So it's okay to have screen time as part of your schedule, but put it in there, put a timer on your phone, have something that alerts you that you only want to be spending so much time on specific days doing this. And then maybe even having days where there's no screen time, where there's kind of a digital detox on those days. So again, on the relaxing day, there's a little more flexibility with the bedtime routine. It gives a few hours after dinner to have some choice about what those self-care activities are going to be that night. So that's an example of alternating. So you could really do every other day with that. You could have 3 active days a week and 4 relaxing days. It just gives you some flexibility so that you have that intuitive guide in yourself telling you what to do on what day. It's really important as well to allow for free time. Again, in the very beginning, when you're first getting used to doing scheduling, you want to have pretty much most of your day mapped out, because it might seem kind of anxiety provoking to have a period of time without anything scheduled in there. You also might feel like you get pulled back into isolation or more feelings of hopelessness or not knowing what to do if you don't schedule that time. But as you progress and you feel like your schedule is able to be more intuitive, we can put time in here for free time. And so you want to keep busy but making mindful choices. And so again, the meal time, the sleep time, those are really key and really important that we're putting those in our schedule. It's really easy with depression, anxiety, OCD, ADD to forget to eat meals or to fall out of that habit of a regular sleep and wake schedule. So that's an important thing we do want to be scheduling. But other than that, we can have some variability here. So we can say, between the hours of 9 and 12, for example, we don't want to have any screen time, but can we engage in some kind of creative activity or mindfulness practice? Can we mix and match? And that's great. If you have a list of activities you love to do, try to pull from that list day to day and just give yourself allotted time. So that's just one other way of making sure that we're allowing that self-guided, self-directed, can I tune in with what my needs are day to day? That just brings us a little bit into seasonal living. So a lot of the times, even people who are very successful and love schedule and routine and kind of thrive off of that can get really burned out if they don't bring a seasonal component into this. So I know a lot of people who, I always use the example of someone maybe training for a marathon, someone who really enjoys competitive sports. They might say they get up at 4:30 every single morning all year and they do the same workout, or they have a very regimented schedule with that. They're not accounting for if it's cold, if it's rainy, if it was really dark out and they were, exhausted still. They're very caught up in that schedule. And a lot of times those people end up feeling really burned out after a while because they're kind of pushing against their body's natural circadian rhythms. They're making themselves stay up late, usually with the assistance of some kind of stimulants, like drinking a lot of coffee during the day or eating junk food. Or just pushing through past the point of where they want to be. They're staying up late to do activities, even in the winter when it's dark at 5 and they're feeling tired around 7. And then they're forcing themselves to get up early and do things. So helping bring in this component of living seasonally. So really remembering that biologically we're programmed to be more active in spring and summer and to slow down in the winter. Even though in our Western society, for a long time, we've been really pushing ourselves to be on 24/7, 365. Not very long ago when we were living in this more agrarian agricultural society, we weren't doing that. And a lot of our neighbors in other countries that still have a little more connection with the land and with where their food comes from and with nature, they don't push themselves to have the same schedule all year round. And a lot of times they're a lot happier for that. They're more connected to, just the cycles of nature. And it helps to not be pushing all the time to always feel like you need to be busy. So an example is a lot of other mammals even hibernate or gain weight in the winter, and then they spend the whole summer being active and foraging. Now, we're not going to that extreme, but just trying to honor and respect that sometimes when people come in and say, okay, in the winter I get seasonal depression, I'm so exhausted all the time, there's a component of that is the lack of sunlight, the lack of vitamin D, feeling tired, getting depressed when the weather's cold, we can't be outside. But there's also a component of that to say, well, how late are you staying up? When are you getting tired? Are you getting tired because it's dark? Could you push your bedtime a little bit earlier and allow your body to have that rest that it needs just for the winter months? And how can we kind of find ways to navigate incorporating the seasons into how we live? So self-care doesn't mean holding ourselves to any kind of impossible standards. We need to take time to check in with our own needs, and really that means our own needs can change as well day to day and throughout every different month and throughout different seasons of the year. So an example that I give here is just 2 different schedules for living seasonally. So, for example, in the summer, it might be really easy to get up at 6 a.m. and go for a walk or a run every day. It's so much easier to get outside and do things like go to the farmer's market to get breakfast and then go to work. Even if you work until 4 or 5, by the time you get home, it's usually still light out enough that you can meet up with friends, go for a hike, go out for dinner. You can sit outside and read, you can meditate, and even by 9 o'clock, that might be an early bedtime for the summer because it's still light out. So it feels really easy to engage in those activities in the summer. So schedule more of those things in the summer. But when it comes to be the winter, be a little more gentle with yourself. Take some of that out of your routine. You might want to push your wake up forward a little bit, wake up a little later, do an exercise, but have it be something fun. Do something inside. Take the time to find a new activity, maybe a free exercise routine on YouTube. Try something new and different. We don't have to be going outside when it's 30 degrees if we don't want to. It's different if you enjoy running in the winter, but the goal here is we don't have to push ourselves to do the same thing all year. So in this example, when you get home from work at 4 or 5, it might be dark already, and maybe you kind of do want to allot for some screen time in the winter. Maybe you get home and you're tired, you don't want to be going outside after dark. So, allowing some of that, but still putting a limit on it. And then after that time is over, trying to schedule time for other activities. So maybe picking up hobbies that you don't usually have time for in the summer. Maybe it's a great time in the winter to push yourself to do a new arts and crafts hobby, or learn an instrument, listen to music, read, meditate, and then still trying to have that normal consistency with sleeping and waking. So the last example I wanted to give is an example of, we don't necessarily always have to have those timestamps put on everything. So maybe your goal is to just make sure that throughout the course of the day, you are engaging in just certain activities, and you want to make sure that you are checking them off the list per se, making sure that you're doing these things, but you don't really want to put a set time to them. You're kind of at this point where either you feel pretty good about sleeping and waking and eating consistently, and you just need to check in about specific goals of meeting your self-care activity goal or your physical activity goal, or maybe you're just not at the point yet where you want to have that expectation or that stress of staying with a set time schedule. You're still maybe struggling with sleeping and waking specific times, but you still want to make sure that you're fitting in healthy activities throughout the day. So a checklist schedule can be really good for that kind of situation. So with this schedule, it's really simple. You're just making a goal of, I want to at least do 3 self-care activities a day. That can be journaling or engaging in artwork or, taking a long bath or going for a walk, whatever those things are, making sure you're doing at least 3 a day. You can have a list that you go off of and just check them off as you go. You're making sure you're eating consistently, but you're not putting a timeline on it. So this is a great way to say, wow, my schedule might be a little bit off, but I'm still making sure that I check off when I get those meals and I'm nourishing my body. And then we're still saying, it's super important to have that 30 minutes of exercise. It can be whatever we want. It can be any time in the day that we fit it in, but we're just acknowledging that we did it. We're tracking our progress towards those goals. Same with creative hobbies, meditation, cleaning the house might be something important to put on here. 30 minutes a day that just make sure that you are getting up, cleaning your space, feeling more aware of your surroundings. Socialization is really important, whether it's a phone call, meeting up with someone, FaceTime, sending emails, giving yourself time for that. And then maybe even there's a check on there for an activity that you want to be mindful of. So did I have less than 3 hours of screen time today? Again, you're not putting a time on it as far as when that has to be. Can be broken up throughout the day. You're still putting a limit just without having it be as structured. So those are the examples. I just kind of made those brief slides to show everyone what I was talking about. So they're gonna, hopefully give some really concrete examples of how to do our schedule, but also be flexible with our schedule. Living seasonally, it's so important this time of year. It's something that so many clients have been talking to me about the last few weeks, just that struggle with, adapting to the time change and the seasons changing. So I hope that this can help, even 1 or 2 of the tools that we talked about today, just to feel a little more grounded, a little bit more structured, feeling like you have some sort of way to organize your day, and that can improve your mood, it can improve your motivation. So if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below, and really hope you're having a wonderful day and a wonderful week now that it's November, and we'll be posting some more videos soon. Have a great day.